Um, all right, so this is the first time we're doing this, so bear with us. There might be a few technical issues, but we'll work through it together. We have an agenda today where we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of the things that Streets for All is working on, starting with Market Street, some transit funding updates, and a couple of smaller projects, wins and fails that we want to cover. And then we'll be joined by Julie Kirschbaum, SFMTA's Director of Transportation, to talk about answer some questions that we've sourced from people who RSVP'd and also from our steering committee, who you see in the featured videos here. Um, so we're going to do a little icebreaker. Feel free to get started. Put your answers in the chat. Our steering committee members who are speaking are also going to answer this question as they come up to speak. But if you can wave a magic wand, what is the one thing you'd change about transportation in San Francisco, or possibly California? But really, we're here to talk about San Francisco today. So uh, I'm Robin, and my thing I would change is I would connect our bike network. There's a few places in my bike ride from the southern part of the city to downtown that don't have protected bike lanes, and it'd be really nice if we could just protect them a little bit. Um, and before we jump in too far, I did want to introduce our steering committee. So our steering committee, who you see here, Micah, Zach, Trish, Cyrus, Lillian, who couldn't be with us. All of these people are helping us guide the Streets for All San Francisco chapter and helping us make policy decisions, take positions on things that the city might be doing, or even potential state legislation. And then next year, as we think about getting involved in elections, we'll all be making decisions about candidates to endorse and how Streets for All is going to engage in local elections here in San Francisco. And finally, before we get into the content, I will plug Streets for All also has a members club. It is Giving Tuesday week, and the best way to support our advocacy is to become a member. You can join at streetsforall.org/members. We get discounts at cool retailers. You get a say in our endorsements, and there's some cool merch too. So check it out. Support the organization. We'd love to have you join. All right, and with that, we're going to talk a little bit about Market Street. I think a lot of people have been paying attention to this issue. Streets for All has been a part of the Keep Market Street Moving coalition that formed earlier this year to push back on the city's efforts to put vehicles back on Market Street. This started back in April when Mayor Lurie announced that Waymo would begin operating on Market. In August, Waymo, Uber, and Lyft Black were allowed to operate for limited hours. And on Tuesday of this week at the SFMTA board, there was an informational item stating that the agency is recommending opening up Market Street for all hours operations for these vehicles relatively soon. So this is still a pilot program. It's still an experiment. The city is collecting data. They will come back soon with more of that data. But the Keep Market Street Moving Coalition is pushing for an actual public vote and action to amend the Better Market Street legislation that originally restricted vehicles on Market Street to close the commercial passenger vehicle loophole that currently exists. Um, as a coalition, we have sent letters recommending policy changes to the mayor's office. We put together a big event and protest back in August. We collected over 2,500 petition signatures and sent thousands of letters to the mayor's office, and have continued to put forward new policy positions as well, policy recommendations on how to move forward with Market Street. We are asking for the MTA board to take an action to close the commercial passenger vehicle loophole so that commercial vehicles are allowed on Market Street, but not ones that carry passengers. This loophole in the legislation we think is being exploited, and we have over 20 organizations that are part of this coalition. And our goal is to ensure that there are no vehicles using Market Street in the future. So that's just a quick overview of what's happening on Market Street. We're monitoring the situation closely, bringing on new partner organizations all the time, and continuing to help influence the way the city is treating this essential corridor and what the future is going to look like there. So with that, you can find out more. The URL is not in here, but keepmarketstreetmoving.org is the coalition website, and there's more information there on the coalition and what's happening. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cyrus to talk about transit funding a little bit.
Thanks, Robin. And I guess I'll first answer the icebreaker up front, which is if there's one thing I could wave a magic wand and change about San Francisco transportation, it would be a more multimodal and integrated approach where you could have a single ticket for your bike share onto Muni and then get a bike on the other side, and it would all be one fare. I think that would be absolutely amazing and game-changing. So let's talk about transit funding. And this is sort of, I guess, a bit of a preview for, I'm sure, what Julie or Director Kirschbaum will be talking about later. But public transit really faces an existential crisis. Go to the next slide, Robin. Where across the United States, the pandemic really broke the assumptions around how we fund public transit. I think the thing that's really directly in front of us for many of us is how it changed our travel patterns on a daily basis, how it changed our commute, but it also really changed how many of the revenue sources that are used to fund public transit, how they are growing or shrinking or staying flat. And the federal government stepped in for a bit, but that money is expended. It's no longer with us, and there is not more money coming from the federal government for operations. The state has stepped in for a while, but that is also coming to an end. And so our public transit agencies are really running on the fumes of relief funding. And so what's the outcome of this? The outcome is that that SFMTA says they may have to cut service. Next slide. May have to cut service up to 50%. And that discount programs like Free Muni for youth and other fare discount programs for seniors are at risk. Next slide. BART has said that without new funding, it would have to shut down 2 out of 5 of its lines, shutter dozens of stations, and end nighttime and weekend service. Next slide. So this is existential. It means a complete shift in what we expect our public transit systems to do. But we've been working on this for some time now, really starting in 2023, where there was a large state campaign that Streets for All and Kids Safe SF at the time were deeply involved in, which ended up winning $1.1 billion in one-time relief funds from the state. This was really to start to patch the end of federal assistance. Over 400 million of that came to the Bay Area. In 2024 was really a huge year in the discussion over a regional measure to really find new funding to support our public transit agencies. And we also participated in Prop L here in San Francisco to try to find relief for Muni to prevent cuts this year. And then this year, through lots of action from everyone in this room, we've won a tentative agreement out of the state for a $750 million loan to really keep us with our current service levels as we go to the ballot next year. And we can go to the ballot because we've won and got past SB 63, which authorized a regional funding measure. And we continue to work towards a sufficient and fair local measure here in San Francisco. Next slide. So what's coming down the pipeline? We are very hopeful that we will have 2 ballot measures in November next year. The first will be a regional measure to generate around $1 billion a year across 5 counties, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Contra Costa, and Alameda County. It's going to be a sales tax, and here in San Francisco, it'll be a 1% sales tax. But that measure will still leave San Francisco with about $150 million a year deficit that we would need to fill in order to avoid service cuts. So there's also going to be a local measure. This will be a variable rate parcel tax. Effectively, what that means is that there will be a fixed base rate, and then past a particular square footage for a parcel, there would be an additional marginal rate. And both of these measures must pass, or Bay Area public transit, as we know it, really will cease to exist. It'll still be there. It will just be in a much diminished form. So what's next for this campaign? Right now, we're doing community outreach. In the spring, there's going to be very large signature gathering efforts. The regional measure will need over 200,000 signatures in order to get on the ballot. It's a huge task. And then the campaigns will submit their signatures around June, early July, and then we get to vote on November 3rd. Next slide. So if you want to connect, we are very actively looking for people who want a table, flyer, do signature gathering, whatever your specialty is. If you have a special skill that you want to offer, you can use the QR code to connect to the campaigns or the URLs below that QR code. And let's go win these measures and let's make sure that public transit can be sustained for the future. Back to you, Robin.
Great. Thank you, Cyrus. Okay, we're going to go through one quick win and one quick opportunity for improvement because we decided that it's not quite a fail. So, Augustina, over to you.
Thanks, Robin. Hi, everyone. SFMTA is installing traffic calming devices like speed humps on over 100 streets this winter, primarily on the west and south sides of the city to meet the demand from residents for safer streets. Streets for All is sponsoring 20 Telerom traffic sensors to be deployed onto these streets to measure the impact of these devices on vehicle volumes and speeds. The sensors pictured here just sit on your window and collect data on the number of cars, bikes, pedestrians who move through your block. If you live on one of the streets shown here that are slated for traffic calming, please scan the QR code to fill out an application and help us measure the impact of the city's program. If you have any questions on the program or eligibility, you can email us at sf@streetsforall.org.
Great. Thanks, Augustina. And now I saw Julie signed on, so we're going to go really quick through the rest of this. Zach Lipton.
Sure. I'll call this one a bit of a missed opportunity. The good news is that the MTA board approved the Clarendon Safety Project last month. This is a road diet that reduces Clarendon to one lane in each direction. It's a very fast moving street where there's a lot of speeding traffic past an elementary school that's long been on the high injury network. So it's great to have a road diet there. The missed opportunity is that this street was also part of the biking and rolling plan network map. And there really wasn't any process to consider putting a protected bike lane in at the same time as this. This project's timed to go with a repaving of Clarendon that's scheduled already with Public Works. It's great to see that because it means Public Works and MTA working together to do this in a cost efficient and timely manner. But there really needs to be a process so that when streets on the biking and rolling plan network are repaved, that the biking and rolling facilities actually get built. So disappointed to not see that happening here. With that, let's move on to the Q&A.
Great. All right. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for presenting. With that, I'm going to stop the presentation and we are going to welcome Julie Kirschbaum, who's joining us from SFMTA. So Julie, yep.
Did Robin just freeze for everyone else?
Yeah, Robin,
Am I frozen?
yeah.
Oh,
No.
Am I back?
You're back.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Julie is almost a year into her tenure at as the director of SFMTA. And we are super thrilled to welcome her to our lunch hour here to answer some questions. And the way we're going to do this is our steering committee has a few questions that we've prepared ahead of time. We asked all of our participants when they registered if they had questions for Julie. So we tried to synthesize some of those and bring out the key themes into the questions that our steering committee is going to ask. And then we do have the audience Q&A, which we're going to work on fixing the permissions for. And we'll drop that link in the chat again. So we can, if you have questions for Julie, please submit them in the audience Q&A and you can upvote other people's questions there. And then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end to ask a few of those questions as well. So just to get started, Julie, I think one thing at a very high level, San Francisco has set a lot of sustainability goals. We've set goals for 80% low carbon trips by 2030. We have a transit first policy in the charter. We've set a lot of these goals over the years as a city, but currently we're not on pace to meet all of them. And it often feels like they're in tension with other goals in the city. Right now, the agency is facing a fiscal cliff. We need voters to support the upcoming funding measures. And I think a lot of us would like to know, what is the agency's strategy to bridge the disconnect between these high level goals that we have for climate and sustainability, but also the on the ground reality with streets and transit that we're facing today with this fiscal cliff?
Uh, Thank you for that softball first question.
We got a lot of
I
softballs lined up, don't worry.
I want to start by just thanking everybody on this call for all of the support and collaboration that you've given me in this new role, but in the agency. When 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 we kind of work together and really pursue our shared goals, I really think we're unstoppable. And I think we saw an example of that on Tuesday when so many people came out to talk about the Bayview Pathways project, where we are implementing some really important work to improve street safety and bike connectivity, but also took the time that we needed to address community readiness and had the kind of support for the project come organically from within the community and then be kind of buttressed, I would say, by the kind of larger advocacy. So that we just really appreciate it and are excited about all of the work. We have also I've just been overwhelmed by how willing so many people have been over the past year to come together and really understand that the most critical thing to all of our shared goals right now is saving Muni. We cannot meet any of our goals for reducing vehicle miles traveled. We cannot meet any of our safety goals if Muni fails, because the congestion that will ensue puts kind of every other way people travel around this city at risk. And Robin, I really appreciate your leadership and Streets for All and everything that folks on this call have done to be up in Sacramento, but also to really, we've never seen the advocate community in San Francisco speak with such alignment, and that has been incredibly helpful. I also want to make sure that you all know that we are not focusing myopically on Muni funding, and we have been pushing really important safety work since the beginning of the year. We had a lot of projects kind of front loaded in the first quarter that I think are going to make some meaningful change. Projects like Oak Street, for example, or Winston Drive. And I appreciate you all helping us to take the time that we needed to make sure that during the transition in leadership, not just for me, but also with Mayor Lurie and his team, that we had the time to build the buy-in, and then also really leverage the fact that for the first time in several decades, we have broad policy support for street safety, and for really recognizing that street safety is public safety.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And I think, Julie, you also have a few slides that you wanted to share to talk about some of these issues. So I want to give you a chance to do that before we go to the next questions.
Does that make sense? Okay. All right. How how long should I spend on the funding slides?
Maybe like 10 minutes.
Perfect.
Does that work? Great.
Yeah. Okay. What do you all see?
There we go. We see it now.
I'm sharing this, Julie, okay?
Wait, you're sharing it? If you share it, Amanda, then I can't move my slides. Are
Oh,
you sure?
okay. I'll stop sharing if you want to do it. Go for it.
I think I'm sharing.
Okay, go for it.
Are you all seeing slides move?
Yeah, I think you're. Yes, we are. We're good.
Okay. So I just wanted to give a brief update on how we're going to be approaching our budget this year and answer any questions that you all have. We are working hard on making sure that we support everything that needs to happen in order to generate the ballot revenue that Cyrus talked about. And that still requires the SFMTA to continue to look for efficiencies and maximize revenues where we can. Per the controller's report, we're starting to see some kind of optimistic lead indicators like BART recovery picking up. That also certainly matches the Muni trends as well. But we are still, I think, a work in progress as we promote and support the recovery of downtown. We are really excited that our ridership trends have been so positive. Am I giving the right presentation? Yeah. Okay. And that includes really weekday recovery, hitting the mark month over month, and then the weekend, and then the weekday recovery really continuing on a positive trajectory. I think that we are benefiting from some of the citywide investments. We're doing a lot to energize and activate the city, and also a real focus within the agency on the customer experience and really making Muni a safe and inviting and reliable experience. We are tracking our budget very closely. We have a lot of things in place to control costs. Those are very necessary because we are kind of continually seeing outside trends that we need to adjust to. So, for example, we're really optimistic that our parking revenue and our fare revenue are tracking either on or a little bit higher than our budget forecasted. But we're finding that needs to offset things like our state revenue coming in lower than we budgeted for. So we are forecasting that we will be on budget in the coming year, and that's really important because these investments in financial health not only help make sure that we're not living outside of our means, but they also help us build credibility as we prepare to ask for a pretty significant investment from the city's residents. So just moving forward, I want to talk a little bit about travel patterns. We really had, I think, going into COVID, the the perception that we had a very diversified and robust set of funding sources for the agency. But what we found coming out of COVID is that they were all uniquely impacted by downtown office work. And so with San Francisco and the overall California and US really experiencing significant changing travel patterns, we really have found that our budget needs to adjust for that. This is just to kind of share what that change has looked like. So we were really relying almost exclusively on locally generated revenue prior to COVID. We had a healthy investment from the cities. If you look 10 years back, we had a healthy investment from the city's general fund. We were also generating almost 50% of our income from parking and from transit fares and from other revenue like advertising. But that looks very different today. We are only generating about 8% of our revenue from fares, and parking has also declined significantly. And we've been able to continue to deliver service and to nurture that important economic recovery and really keep all of the important values that transit helps support in San Francisco through a huge investment of one-time money from the federal government and the state government. And San Francisco isn't unique in that. The Bay Area is not unique. Agencies across the country needed that one-time support in order to bridge this very difficult time. But as that relief gets spent down in San Francisco, Muni, we will be spent down by this summer. We need to identify replacement funding sources. So just to give you a sense of the scale of the issue we're trying to address, starting this summer, we will be facing a budget gap of about $307 million. I'm very proud that we've been able to reduce that gap through a lot of proactive measures that we've taken. For example, increasing parking meter rates modestly. And then the kind of complexity of our challenge is because our cost of living and inflation is increasing much faster than we are forecasting our revenues to grow, even the new revenues that we're contemplating. Our gap grows from 307 million to 434 million, which is a really significant change and requires us to really think about what are some structural changes we can make to help bring our costs and our revenue more in line. I think it's been a very interesting time to figure out kind of how we thread the needle to make sure that we are focusing on the positive, which is that we have so many people aligned and working together to save Muni and to save BART and Bay Area Transit, and also make sure that people really understand the stakes if we are not able to bring in these new revenues. And that would include things like suspending our lowest ridership routes that serve people aging in place, serve our hilltop communities. We would see up to a 50% reduction routes that take kids to school and work, like the 38 Geary and the 29 Sunset. Instead of growing late night service, we would really be ratcheting it back. And so many of the programs that people rely on, like free Muni for youth, and our discounts for people in low income households, would be put at risk. I think I already covered this. Again, these are national trends. Different regions are dealing with it differently. In some places, the state has stepped up and made a heavy investment. We are looking at more regional and local solutions, but with a ton of support from our state legislatures and the governor. Muni has been adapting all along, and I think that I've already covered this, so I will move on. But I think it's important as we think about how we communicate with various stakeholders to really emphasize that we're not just out with our hand out, that we are taking our own fiscal health extremely seriously, and we are making a lot of changes to try to deliver our service more cost effectively. I think the most kind of innovative example of that is our Muni Forward program, where we estimate that the 75 miles of transit lanes are actually saving us $10 million a year just by not only getting buses from point A to point B quicker, but also by generating more ridership. So people want to be on the system and they want to make Muni their mode of choice. And yet, I also want to be really clear that these efficiencies, they're critical, they are ongoing, and they do not scale to the problem that we are facing. There is no solution where we can continue to meet our economic goals, our climate goals, our equity goals, if we are decimating Bay Area transit, which is why it is so important that we have this very robust funding strategy that Cyrus spoke to previously. We're essentially looking at it as a three-legged stool. So the regional measure, which fortifies BART and Caltrain and AC Transit and makes a huge investment in Muni, complemented by a local regional measure and ongoing cost reductions. We also are working to put together a set of funding of one-time sources for this upcoming fiscal year from July 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2027. And the reason for that is we don't expect the new revenue coming into the ballot is going to be available until the following year, just because of the complexities of starting up a new revenue measure. Those one-time sources will be a combination. We're working closely with the State Department of Finance on a loan. We also have been working very hard as an agency to preserve one-time funding that can also help get us through this fiscal year. And then over time, you'll see the kind of how the three-legged stool plays out as we complement agency efficiencies with the regional and the local measure. For those of you that are tracking our budget closely, this slide kind of walks you through what our process is. We presented the work on the local measure to the board in November. On Tuesday, Bree gave some of the same slides I gave today, really just letting our board know that we are on track and that our fiscal health is strong. We are going to be sharing some small changes that we think can help maximize our own revenues in the coming year at the 16th, while also recognizing that in previous budget cycles, we have relied very heavily on our own revenue sources. So many things like our parking tickets are already at what we think is a balanced rate. And so we're going to be focusing in areas that we think really complement some of the other work we're doing. All of our service and budget work is informed through an equity lens. We have a Muni equity working group that meets throughout the year and helps inform how our budget ties to our equity goals. We will be then sharing some of the efficiencies, our capital approach. And then by the end of January, we hope to be able to put a little more detail on this graph. Yeah, so what are the big building blocks? So rather than saying, okay, we need hundreds of millions of one-time money, what chunk is coming from the state, what chunk is coming from internal sources, things like that. And then using the budget workshop to really try to refine that. We also, throughout this process, are also gathering a lot of public outreach on budget priorities, so that as our board faces trade-offs, they understand what the community is really looking for us to deliver in the coming 2 years.
Julie, this is really great. Thank you so much for all of the information and background on the budget. I think a lot of people don't have this background, so it's super helpful to hear you talk through it.
I don't know how to stop sharing.
Okay. There should be.
Can you kick me out? Oh, here.
There we go. Okay. We do have a few questions, and I know you had a few more slides, but I think we want to skip to questions because I know people have to get back to their jobs at 1. So I want to turn it over to Zach, who has a question that maybe leads into some of the content you were going to present, but maybe we can get it wrapped up in a question instead. So Zach.
Sure. Thank you. And thanks for this. The muni funding situation is obviously existential for anything that we want to achieve in San Francisco. And everyone here will be hearing lots more about ways to get involved and help and pitch in, because it really will take all of us to make this happen. But I wanted to ask a little bit. There's a lot of interest from folks here about the biking and rolling plan, where over the past several years, the city built many new protected bike lanes, slow streets, and enacted the biking rolling plan as policy. But even though a few projects were approved this year, there's a growing perception that progress on the active transportation network is stalling or backsliding. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little to how the agency is planning to make progress connecting towards a low-stress bike network. Specifically, what concrete steps can we expect from the streets team over the next year that go beyond traffic calming and daylighting? Are there a couple citywide capital projects or network-wide changes that residents might see?
Thank you for that question. And I actually, Robin, if at all possible, I would like to come back and have a whole discussion. I need help from you all on how to combat that perception, because I think it is really false. We not only did we pass the bike and roll plan, but with the passage of the general obligation bond in 2024, we also have kind of historic levels of investment dollars in order to deliver projects. And we are doing everything from, tracking with Public Works to make sure that we're implementing projects, for example, on 5th Street and 11th Street as they repave. We are also actively working to upgrade infrastructure on our slow streets, where we are still seeing speeds not meet our expectations. We are delivering major street projects like on Folsom in south of Market. And we are continuing, I think we've got like 8 quick build projects in the queue. So we continue to have projects in every phase of the pipeline. We are also focusing on these citywide efforts like daylighting and the automatic speed enforcement. And it is possible that some of the attention that work is getting, or some of the policy work we're doing around renewing Vision Zero, has de-emphasized some of these other investments. So I need some help. We're not going to solve it on this call, but we need some help. That narrative is out there, and it is not helpful, I think, to any of our shared goals.
Great. Thank you. Micah, you want to jump in with a follow-up?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Director, for being here and for your presentation. Our next question is actually follows on to something you mentioned, which is the Slow Streets program, which, as I'm sure you know, is very popular. And there's interest in creating and resurrecting more slow streets around the city. I live in Bernal Heights. In a recent neighborhood meeting in Bernal Heights, residents were told that the Slow Streets program wouldn't be expanded until the existing slow streets were back within the target ranges for vehicle speeds and vehicle counts. What solutions is the agency considering or planning to implement to bring those traffic metrics back into compliance with what they want to see on the Slow Streets program?
I think we are looking to apply some of our best practices for traffic calming, and also do it in a way that really celebrates community and improves the quality of the space. I think that we have continued to innovate with quick build solutions, but I'm also really proud that we have a program that is starting to then convert quick build to more permanent changes. So I think it'll be a combination of things, everything from street murals to more plantings to more traditional traffic calming measures. But it's work underway, and I think probably better delivered by the actual engineers working on it than me trying to summarize it.
Great, thank you. I know there's a lot of love for slow streets in this world, so everybody's eager to continue to see progress made there. Cyrus, over to you. I think we're going to wrap up a few audience questions here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for the presentation on the budget, Julie. I think that's really helpful, and I hope it explained a lot about how the agency is approaching the budget. And so I want to ask a question that's a little more hopeful, a little more future-looking, which is right now the agency is running less than 90% of pre-pandemic service hours, and buses and trains are full during peak. But if we pass a regional measure and a local measure that produces sufficient revenue to add service back, how would the agency approach prioritizing that? Are there ideas around what service the agency would particularly want to put back? Shouldn't say put back, but add to service?
I would think of it in a few different categories, but also recognize that this is exactly the kind of work that we would want our Muni Equity Working Group to weigh in on, and probably a broader set of public stakeholders. But I think it would fall into a few categories. The first is just crowding management. So as the city grows, we want to be able to stay in front of that growth, and to do it in a way that is both cost effective, but also really attractive to customers. So, for example, there's a couple corridors where we have not been able to bring back express service to downtown that we would really like to be able to continue to grow and expand. But we would also love to have a 29 Rapid, helping connect um, people who are going to school and working at major institutions like our high schools, City College, um, SF State. There are also some places where we we would like to strengthen transit connections. So, for example, is there a way that we could get Richmond and Sunset residents more connected to the Daly City BART station? The Potrero Hill is one of the only neighborhoods that has not had direct service to downtown restored. So, for me, it's not looking at like, should we bring exact routes back from 5 or 6 years ago, because I think the city has evolved and changed. But how can we lean into how people are traveling today to give people more quicker and more convenient options?
Great. Thanks, Julie. Trish, I think you're going to jump in.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Director, for joining us today, for answering our questions, and for your presentation. There is a question in the chat I would like to ask you. This is related to streets. The Kirkham neckdown is slated for removal, and daylighting progress has slowed, both seemingly in response to driver pushback. How might we support the city to make bolder choices that keep vulnerable road users safe and connected, even when some drivers are unhappy with change?
I think I would answer that a couple of ways. If we're going to continue to learn and evolve this work, we have to be comfortable trying things. And we also have to be comfortable that not every experiment works as we expected. I would say that the Kirkham neckdown had a disproportionate amount of negative feedback relative to the changes we saw it delivering in terms of driver behavior. So I don't think that that is a failure to continue and move the work forward. I think it's actually a really successful example of trying something and then trying something different next. I think we also need to start speaking more expansively in how we talk about all of the benefits of our work, so that we are not creating an us versus them, but recognizing that our safety work helps drivers incredibly. Our collision reduction work in many ways is aimed at people getting from point A to point B in their cars. And really, I think, try to emphasize how all of these networks are working together in the same way that I think we've been able to show that transit and biking have a lot of alignment because they help give people choices that reduce congestion. I think we also need to be talking about how that benefits drivers. and what the city would look like if everybody who is using their bike or everybody who is taking transit suddenly wanted or chose to drive their own vehicle. So I think it's a little bit about turning down the temperature, and really showing how these projects are helping everyone, not helping some people at the expense of others.
Great.
Let me ask another question from the chat. This one relates to parking. With revenue being a main source of concern for Muni and for public transit in San Francisco, what would be a roadmap for implementing stronger parking revenues and/or congestion pricing to fund transit?
I think we need a little bit of time to think that through. I think that the Transportation Authority has done some interesting work on congestion pricing. I think cities around the country are learning from New York, but it's I think any work there is much longer term. We have been working very hard to optimize our parking revenue. In fact, we were able to really minimize any impacts to our core work this current year by doing some strategic parking optimization. And I think we're going to want to continue to do that.
All right, we have one more question in the chat and one more prepared question that we're going to close it out with. So we have 4 minutes to get through both of these. Julie,
okay, I'll be brief.
Rapid fire. What's going on with Arguello from the chat?
We are right now trying to figure out what is what we want to bring to the community on Arguello. So I don't think that I don't think I can address it in rapid fire, but it is something that we have work underway and is definitely on in our work scope in the coming months.
It's good to hear. I think a lot of us have been waiting for that for a while, so hopefully some good opportunities to engage coming up. And somewhat related, the city just passed this big family zoning plan this week. This is happening. We are upzoning a lot of the west side, the north parts of the city that coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, don't have the best transit service. And as we build all of this new housing, I think we want to hear a little bit more about what are the top transit and street safety investments that you think are needed over the next 10 to 20 years to keep all of these new residents moving. And, what can we expect to see? And if you could wave a magic wand, what would that look like?
Well, I mean, I think we're very fortunate that the family zoning plan leans into and complements our transit network. And so I think that through that complementary work, we're going to be able to see and to afford increased frequency where we have already programmed growth. So I would like us to get to a point where everybody is within a route that provides 10-minute service or better, and that we are continuing to expand our rapid network to match where we have the growth. I also think it is important, and I know that this is sometimes boring, but I think we need, as a transportation community, to also start thinking and working to make sure that the infrastructure that we already have will be in a state of good repair as the city grows. We made some very important funding investments in BART several years ago when a measure was passed to be able to upgrade BART infrastructure, and that was complemented by a federal core capacity grant. But the Muni subway is the same age as the BART infrastructure and does not have a similar funding strategy. So one of the things that we presented to our board on Tuesday was a vision for Muni expansion that we will work to mirror, to marry with our infrastructure replacement needs to make sure that we are growing in corridors like the Anjuda and along the spine of the subway all the way to Park Merced, while also making critical infrastructure investments. I know, like, if you ask anyone, do you want to replace your roof or do you want to replace your kitchen? Like, people want a new kitchen, and I get that. But we are going to be looking at some real roof replacement issues over the next 10 to 15 years. So we are working to get through these kind of short-term operational funding challenges and then really think strategically on how increasing capacity and investing in our infrastructure can move together.
Great. Well, with that, we are at 101, and I want to respect everybody's time. So thank you very much, Julie. We really appreciate you coming and sharing so much great information and insights into transit and streets and what's going on at MTA. And hope to have you back in the future for more in-depth discussions of the issues as they come up.
Thank you for having me, and thank you again to everything that Streets for All is doing. We just feel like we have so many people working together for our agency right now, and we are beyond grateful.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.